Well, they don't care about anything that's not in their front of their face. And because it ain't happening here, they don't care. Believe me, if Washington, D.C. were on the border, we'd have a wall 1,000 feet high. The other crisis that the media doesn't really want to talk about, other than to the degree it might cause political problems for Joe Biden, is the Biden border crisis, where he has decimated our security measures on the border. President Trump had put in some basic security measures that alleviated or significantly mitigated the border crisis down in our border with Mexico. All of that went out the window with the extremist open borders crowd that came in with Joe Biden. And as a result, we've had record numbers of illegal aliens crossing, supposedly some seeking asylum, some not, all being treated and almost given welcome receptions, including tax dollars, by the Biden administration, who as a government has been outrageously aiding and abetting this illegal activity. They cross the border, they get across the border, they're giving essentially bus tickets, and I'm not exaggerating, or they're flown all over the country. So every town becomes a border town in a crisis like that. And the Biden administration and President Biden's refusal to enforce our nation's laws against illegal immigration, to me, should be certainly the primary subject of an impeachment inquiry, assuming that Congress ever gets its act together. In the meantime, Judicial Watch, or actually for some time, Judicial Watch has been concerned about our borders. We've tried to sue and stop and expose sanctuary cities that encourage illegal immigration, that violate the law. And of course, we've been examining the security crisis on our border, which is not controlled by the U.S. government. It is controlled by the cartels. The cartels control the other side of the border, and everything we do organizationally on our side is in response to them. So they play our law enforcement like a fiddle. They do great work down there with the circumstances they've been put in, but the circumstances are untenable for our Border Patrol and local law enforcement that are having to contend with this invasion. I think the most recent numbers that have come out, which are always come out late because the Biden administration wants to slow walk the release of uncomfortable information, is over 211,000 apprehensions or encounters at the border, if I think that's the number I'm going by there. And so that's only a section of those, or a small segment of those, who get by without having to run across the Border Patrol or it being intersected by the Border Patrol. Now remember, the Border Patrol, just because you're apprehended, doesn't always turn you away. Tens of thousands of those people are allowed to enter the country despite crossing the border illegally because of a malinterpretation or misinterpretation or misapplication or purposeful refusal to enforce our laws against this type of transit activity. And of course, when you're engaged in that sort of mass scale human trafficking, that's to the benefit of the cartels, who actually are doing that work. So they're financially benefiting from it, and they're using it as a way to move drugs and traffic, and in addition to the trafficking of human beings and sex trafficking associated with that as well. So this is what your tax dollars are doing. They are aiding and abetting human trafficking on our border and an invasion of our nation. And Judicial Watch's Chris Farrell, who is our Director of Investigations, I hope many of you know Chris from his work at Judicial Watch over the years. He went down to the border last week or the week before last, and he's been down there, probably 15 to 20 times by now. And Chris was finding more information that the media is hiding from you, or the Biden administration is hiding from you. For instance, a senior official in the federal law enforcement down there told Chris that the Mexican cartels had flown 9,000 drone flights into the United States to surveil law enforcement operations. According to our report that Chris generated, Mexican drug cartels have conducted more than 9,000 drone flights in the last year, as I said, to surveil our law enforcement and security operations in the southern border region, a senior Homeland Security official told Judicial Watch this week. The drones are observing federal, state, county, and city agencies near the Mexican border, including the Border Patrol, the Texas Department of Public Safety, Texas National Guard, county sheriffs, and local police. The Border Patrol, which operates under Customs and Border Protection, has captured about a dozen of the drones and accessed the Unmanned Aerial Vehicles guidance and memory systems to gain intelligence information, according to a high-level official at the agency. Judicial Watch has learned that the Mexican drone incursions during a recent visit. Judicial Watch learned about those incursions as a result of our visit, and specifically while interviewing federal officials at the Center for Border Patrol Rio Grande Valley sector in Texas. Now, of course, we're further investigating the matter to get documents about what's going on. But this is what they're doing. They're using the drones to facilitate human smuggling and drug trafficking. They help identify gaps in border coverage and assist the cartels in overwhelming certain areas to create a diversion for moving sensitive or high-value loads through alternate border locations. So that's what's going on. So what you hear about going on in Ukraine is terrible, but we are facing a quasi-military operation on our border, and we are not responding as we should, as a sovereign nation should. And everyone knows what's going on. We've known it for years. The Mexican drug cartels run their operations in a quasi-military way. I remember reporting on this to you years ago, and Chris he had seen this work on the border. They had spotter locations, powered spotter locations. It's little solar power cells so that they could stay warm or do whatever they needed to do to communicate overlooking the border on our side of the country, in our nation. And they'd see the Border Patrol in the distance, and they'd see where they were, and they would guide people in using the spotter system, as I said, from our side of the border. And it's just getting worse and worse. The Biden administration just has this, I don't know if it's incompetence. Well, let's just put it this way. I do know it's incompetence because it's the government, right? And you know, President Biden isn't all there in many respects, so there's that added stress war to our governance structure. But you've got the Biden administration, upset that all these people are crossing, but refusing because they're being captured by the radical left that wants open borders to enforce the law. Now, there was this famous remain in Mexico policy because what had happened is people were coming across the border, fraudulently seeking asylum, but triggering the asylum process, being let out into our country as a result, never showing up, and effectively living here forever. So to stem that abuse, President Trump put this remain in Mexico policy in place over the objections and caterwauling of everyone in the media and here in D.C., and effectively stopped it because you had to stay in Mexico while your asylum claims were usually fraudulent, were being evaluated. So the Biden administration tried to just end that program. But the court said, as Trump learned, that you just can't end government programs without notice and comment and, going through the paces that the law requires. And the courts ordered him to say, you can't do that. You've got to go through, you've got to do a process. In the meantime, you got to keep the program going. So they seem to be, according to our report, defying the court order by failing to properly enforce the Remain in Mexico policy, even though they promised the court they would. This is what's going on. The Biden administration obviously has been under tremendous pressure to terminate the program completely, which they can't because of the court order. So what's going on is that let me see what the detail is here. So I want to get well, I guess you won't be surprised. A senior Customs and Border Patrol official in Texas told Judicial Watch that 130 illegal immigrants per day are permitted to be tagged for the MPP program. So of the thousands that cross, they only send back or make eligible to be sent back 130. Only about 40 of the 130 nominated each day to get returned to Mexico, the source confirmed. That keeps the court happy, supposedly. And a single male, by the way, would come in, and this is how they're gaming the system, reveal that he was married and has 4 children in Mexico, for instance. After authorities would identify him for being returned to Mexico while they evaluate his so-called asylum claim, he is still put on a 24-hour legal hold for consultation with volunteer legal organizations, which are obviously geared to making it harder to send him out and to keep him here. The leftist aid groups actively encourage the Mexican man to declare himself lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, or questioning, because LGBTQT, I don't know how I'm at a loss for the alphabet number letters here, because it is one of the many exempt categories. I didn't know this was an exempt category. I guess I did, but it's quite obvious it is. And if you say that you identify as LGBT, you're exempt from being deported, even if your asylum claim is obviously fraudulent, or you're obviously eligible to have to reside in Mexico while your asylum claim is being adjudicated. And so it's over, and presto, he's released into the country. And so that's how they're gaming the system. So, of course, Congress can help fix that, but the Congress is not controlled by those who want to protect us against protect our nation against this invasion. The president is planning to lift what is called Title 42, which allows them to summarily remove people based on for public health reasons. They're saying that, well, COVID somehow isn't important anymore, so therefore they need to lift it, which is obviously bunk. There are other significant public health reasons for maintaining security on the border in the face of the alternative, which is rather than 200,000 a month, getting 800,000 a month. How would that not help but overwhelm public health services? So even Democrats are starting to get a little bit nervous about this. So what is the solution? Well, the first solution is enforce the law. Turn back everyone you can within the law. Don't think of ways to help illegal aliens avoid the law as a government official. Think of ways to enforce the law and err on the side of protecting our sovereignty. Secondly, we should have our military, and I've said this during the Trump administration, and I'll say it during the Biden administration, and I know it will be even less likely to get done during the Biden administration. Our military should be deployed to defend our country. And it means on the southern border. And if the federal government and the Biden administration refuses to do its constitutional duty to protect our nation from this invasion, the Constitution specifically allows states to protect themselves from invasion. And states can join compacts that don't have to be approved by Congress. Generally speaking, if states want to go into compact with each other, it has to be approved by Congress, with the exception of for their defense from invasion. So if you have hundreds of thousands of foreign nationals controlled by a quasi-military terrorist group, how is that not invasion? So states like Arizona and Arizona and Texas, and it's not just the border states. Arkansas, Oklahoma, Illinois, the whole Midwest is affected by this. There's no town that isn't a border town because of this. So any state with brave and bold leadership can participate in protecting our nation in the face of the abandonment and Biden being AWOL on his oath of office. So this is what I think you should do. I'm giving you an action item. Ask your state representatives and your governors and your attorney generals, why aren't they doing this? Now, I know if you're in a blue state, you may think, well, it's not worth my time. It is worth your time. Because, listen, If they hear noise about out-of-control illegal immigration, it may change policy in ways you don't expect or may not understand initially. Because you see, for instance, Democrats getting nervous about this because even their own constituents are yelling them about it. So no matter who represents you, no matter who's your governor, I encourage you to share your views about the illegal immigration crisis. It's not just a federal issue. It is a state issue. The Constitution makes it a state issue. And so in the meantime, Judicial Watch will continue its FOIA work, look for opportunities to challenge illegal policies in the courts. And, we're not forgetting about the border. I mean, here in Washington, one of the things that always bugs me is that Washington is, as far as what goes on in the West and in the border, it could be, as far as Washington is concerned, it's another country. They really don't care. I mean, it's so provincial. I mean, the people here in Washington think they're so sophisticated and so progressive, and they understand, and they promote their ability to be empathetic on issues. Well, they don't care about anything that's not in their front of their face. And because it ain't happening here, they don't care. Believe me, if Washington, D.C. were on the border, we'd have a wall 1,000 feet high. So Judicial Watch will continue its investigations. We'll be there in person, and we'll be educating you and the American people and law enforcement and legislators about the border crisis.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.